Namaste, Yogi Mehtab Benton. It's an
Sadhana.
honor and a privilege to be here with you.
I am happy to be with you
Yeah,
today to
thank
talk
you.
about sound healing and the gong.
I know,
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
super excited.
Yeah.
So, I would like to start off with asking you, who is Yogi Mehtab? In a nutshell, I know that's.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Well, obviously I've been practicing yoga for quite some time. I don't 35, 40 years, 50 years practicing yoga. But my other identity is as a gong player, and this is one of my passions is teaching people how to use sound and healing with the practice of yoga. So bringing yoga and sound together, that's what I really love to do. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's amazing. So, how did you get started on this journey?
Well, as I said, I think my first experience with the gong was in a yoga ashram in the 1970s.
Wow.
And back in those days, we were actually doing sound healing then. We didn't really know what it was. We didn't call it sound healing. But we know that when people were detoxing from hard drugs, for example, heroin and cocaine, we used our ashram as a halfway house for people transitioning into sobriety. And part of that transition process is they would come and do a yogic lifestyle, but they'd also have the gong to support their nervous system regenerating. So my first experience of using the gong was seeing it being used in a healing modality back in that day for people who were just trying to look for something beyond the addictive response to drugs, things like that. Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah, it was really beautiful because you could see that the changes that occurred in people when they actually received this sound session once a day for 40 days, for 6 weeks. So over time, they were telling us that they didn't feel the impulse to do the drugs again because they're actually experiencing these other realms of consciousness with the sound of the gong.
Wow.
Yeah, it was really nice, yeah.
So for you, it started out as just gong because I mean nowadays you see like sound baths, sound healing has really taken off,
yeah.
and there's a lot of different instruments that people are using.
Absolutely.
So
yeah.
you were never one of those people to. Right, because back then
That's-
it
you-
wasn't like, oh, and here's tuning forks and here's
No,
crystal bowls.
even a gong was very unusual back then. I mean,
Yeah.
to find one, to buy one, you'd have to go to certain music stores. It wasn't very common at all because in the Western world, the gong really started coming into more prominence back in the late 1960s with some of the rock and roll bands like Moody Blues and Led Zeppelin. They were using the gong as accents in their concerts. And they actually took a bunch of gongs to Woodstock for the first time, and it kind of exposed the counterculture to these amazing instruments called the gong. And as a result of that, it did hold that little space of, what's the right word, esoteric. It wasn't really mainstream at all. And I think it was really, my experience was in the early to mid 1990s, was when the gong really started to come into prominence in the yoga community, particularly, but also the sound healing community started recognizing the power of the gong with singing bowls and tuning forks. And so now, as you said, it's quite astounding to see where we're at with the nature of sound healing in the world today.
Right.
Yeah.
So this is incredible that this was your introduction. I mean, and kind of like you were saying before that, it was just drummers and percussionists,
Pretty much,
people
yeah.
in symphonic orchestras.
Yes, orchestra,
Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely. And in a few monasteries in Europe, they would use the gongs to call people to meditation and prayer, but it was typically used in a musical sense. And I think what we've seen is that, or what we discovered, is that the sound itself it can be extremely healing when people play it properly. And that's my passion, is try to teach people how do you use these amazing instruments to heal and to elevate and to change consciousness. Yeah.
Yeah, that's incredible. So what has your, I know it's been 30 something years, so it's hard to sum that up, but like what would you say like has been your most profound experiences?
Well, I think the most profound experiences I've had with the gong is having people tell me their profound experiences.
Yes.
Truly, because it's so much unexpected things have happened when people listen to the gong. They are able to connect to parts of themselves they didn't even recognize. It was like an awakening for many people. I have to tell you, one of my journeys with yoga and sound started way back in the days of psychedelics, LSD. And my passion was just trying to find a way to change consciousness in a way that was sustainable and healthy. And so for me, it was like I liken the experience of the gongs and sound healing to that first awakening people experienced in the 60s and 70s with the psychedelic revolution. It's interesting that we're kind of coming back around to that in this culture right now, and we're bringing the sound into that as well. So again, a profound experience I think I've had is people who have had some pretty severe trauma, especially around loud noises. People who've been in war zones, for example. The healing that occurred when they're able to experience sound, and big sounds too, in a very safe environment and an environment of elevation and security. And it was really, I think, a breakthrough for them to realize that they could actually encounter this trauma they had or were carrying and have it be taken care of.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's incredible.
Yeah, it was I think we're just beginning to discover what sound can do in terms of changing consciousness, which is a very big thing.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. Well, now what about for you personally? So that's like been people have been telling you their experiences.
Yeah.
Have you had any of those kind of moments for yourself where it was like you were seeing visions or?
Well, you know, it's interesting. It's like when you're teaching something, you're teaching yoga, or you're playing the gong. You have to be somewhat present in the body as you're doing it. So I don't get to like go out and have those experiences because I have to stay connected to the sound and the healing process. I think that one of the things that the gong has taught me, it wasn't like an aha thing or a big sudden thing, but over time I realized when you play the gong, you have to play very intuitively. You have to be in the present moment. You can't be in the future. You can't be thinking about what you're going to do because it's spontaneous. It's not like a composition that you're playing along and trying to do something next. You're trying to just feel into the moment and play to the moment that you're in, the present moment. And so for me, that's also kind of started to get into my life where I feel like your life is much more easier when you can live it like you're playing the gong, the moment to moment and intuitively, and also serving the environment and people you're around to live your life like that. And I think what the gong does, and also teaching, and especially teaching yoga does, is it puts you in a very neutral space where you're here just to elevate and to serve, and you're here to really listen to what you're being guided by, in this case being guided by the sound of the gong itself. So I think that was the great teacher for me. It didn't happen like overnight. It was more like a realization that, you know, you can actually live your life and consciousness the way you live it when you play the gong, to be in that intuitive space. So that was kind of like the aha moment for me.
Right.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
So what have you, through the years of doing this, like, have you seen anything crazy?
Well,
Now we get to the
no,
crazy
you
stuff.
want the crazy stuff. I don't like that thing, yeah. Crazy. Well, you know, I have a pretty wide tolerance for crazy. I mean, nothing's too weird for me. I'm an Aquarian. I love unusual weird things. I have heard people using the gong in ways that I have not thought of using the gong before, which is quite true as well. For example, and this isn't crazy, but I've had people tell me who work with animals, particularly horses, sometimes dogs, that they've actually found the gong to be very soothing and healing for these animals. Especially, you know, they tell me horses especially. I've trained several people to play the gong for both with horses and also with people meditating with horses. So that's kind of unusual, not crazy, but it was, I never thought I would see that application, for example, to use it in that way. I've had some stories that are really profound about how people have healed, particularly certain populations like youth at risk who live on the streets, how the gong really helped them relax for the very first time in their lives. You know, so
you shared that story with us.
yeah.
Night.
So it's a beautiful story. Basically, you know, the gong creates deep relaxation, and for some people, there are some people who really never relaxed or haven't relaxed for a long time. And the gong kind of almost, it doesn't force you, but it allows you to just let it go. And when that happens, it's like a new you, a new discovery, like that as well. Now, the crazy thing I have seen, I guess, is I think is, and it's not, again, it's a strong word.
Right.
But you know, I see people using it in certain ways, like in raves and in festivals and you know, ayahuasca ceremonies, and you see it used in ways that probably weren't necessarily you know, considered, you know, when I first started to play. And so I'm kind of curious about how, as we take these gongs into new populations, new environments, how it's going to affect the people who are there. Because from my point anyway, is that I came to the gong basically with an ideal to heal and elevate consciousness. And that's what they do very well. So I think one of the things we may face in sound healing especially is how do you maintain that integrity of who you are as a, if you want to call yourself a sound healer or a sound, whatever it may be, maintaining that integrity of the sound with the player and the person you're working or the person that you're working with. I think that's probably the challenge with sound healing. It's like, is it going to be a revolution or is it going to be just a blip on the radar where it just happens and then probably 10 years from now people say, sound healing, that was so old school. My sense is if we as people in the sound healing community manage it properly, we can take this to a level that even we cannot expect to have it happen. I tell people oftentimes that I think we're just at the beginning of a curve where this will only get bigger as we go. But this is only true if the people who are participating in this process take the time to work on themselves. Because if you call yourself a healer or a teacher or whatever you want to call yourself, you have to live up to that, especially with these modalities, because you can't hide the sound of the gong. When you play the gong, it really shows who you are. If you're not a very together person, your gong playing is not going to sound very together. If you're an angry person, you might have an angry gong playing session. So I think part of this playing process and of sound healing is agreeing to do the work on yourself to be able for an agent of change for the sound to come through. Because as a sound healer, all you're doing is turning your energy and your consciousness into sound that people can hear. So it's really pretty self-revealing in some ways. When people are with you and you're playing something, you're really showing a part of yourself that is very, very intimate in some ways. So I do think it takes a lot of commitment to be on this journey, if this is your journey.
Sure.
Otherwise, you can play the guitar in a band and have fun.
Right.
So that's probably the distinction we're all trying to figure out is how do you distinguish between using musical instruments for healing as opposed just for, I don't know, self-expression, entertainment, performance. So my big thing about sound healing is that we're not performers here. Well, you can be, of course, you can be anything you want to be. But if you are going to use it in that modality, it requires, I think, a different relationship to what we call music or sound.
Right.
In that way.
So that's a good point, because I was going to ask you about that. Like, people should feel relieved, and for lack of a better word, in a sense that if they're thinking, oh, I'm not musical, or I can't play the piano, or it kind of breaks down that barrier.
Yeah, and I think this is a change in society too, because people are looking for that sound, that quality of sound that elevates them. Like you see people now, it would be unimaginable for me 20 years ago, 30 years ago, to say, you would be living in a time where people walk around with things in their ears, listening to all kind of music. They can have access to millions of songs. I was on the airplane yesterday. They said we have 1 million songs in our library. I thought 1 million songs in my library, but it's almost like going to a restaurant where it's all you can eat, but the food isn't very good. Now, not that I'm saying the music's not very good, but we have a hunger for something in sound that we try to fulfill through the traditional way of listening to like symphonies, jazz, hip hop, whatever music you like to listen to. And there's nothing wrong with that. It is that musical nature of the human mind. But I think as we evolve in consciousness, we're looking for that. It's like, and I maybe I'm overusing the analogy, but it's like food. If you want to eat really good natural food 40 years ago, not too easy. It's not too easy at all. And now you go to places where it's expected. There's an ability to have organic food, fresh food. We all understand the quality of food, how important it is to eat good food, how our health depends on it. We haven't quite got to that with sound yet. So oftentimes we live in a place where the sound is kind of like refined food. It's overly refined. It's not that self-expression. And I think there's that hunger in sound to find something in sound that nourishes us just like really good food nourishes us. And it's probably going to depend on having this new relationship to what we call music. Music in our culture is mostly to entertain. And just like TV, it's great. We need to be at movies. We need that. But we're also looking for something that has a different level of consciousness behind it that nourishes us and nurtures us, that gives us that vital life force like food gives us, or sunshine gives us, or water gives us. So my thing is I think we're experiencing how do you produce and relate to sound, just like we eventually come to this different relationship we have with what we put into our bodies and all that as well.
Well, speaking of music, I have to ask, if you had 1 million songs like they offered you on the plane, what would be like 5 that you would choose?
Oh my God. Oh my, no, you're asking really the wrong person. Well, I'll tell you why.
Well, you did mention the Beatles last time. So.
No, I do. But as I started doing with sound healing work, I have found that I tend to gravitate toward music that is somewhat, I don't, what's the right word for it? I hate to use the word spirit,
Conscious?
conscious, thank you.
Okay.
Not necessarily new age music or
Right,
relaxation music, but music where something like we call kirtan, where there's this
Yes.
use of that mantric sound. You know, in yoga, in the practice of mantra, we have something called nod. And nod is like that universal flow of sound, the cosmic sound. And you can capture that with the gong and with singing bowls and other instruments. So I like music that kind of reminds me of that. And consequently, you know, you can really listen to some beautiful, I don't know, when I'm trying to discover how to play the gong, I tell people, listen to these really amazing compositions that were done hundreds of years ago, like the symphonies of Beethoven, people like that. Because what they've done, they've learned, in those days, they would tell a story through their music. It's very narrative, because they didn't have movies or people, not even that many books sometimes. So people would go and hear this music. And these concert halls, it's a very rare occasion, by the way. You know, now we hear it any time, but it might take months before we get to hear it. But when they went to that experience, it put them in a place of a narrative flow of a different consciousness, and it gave them this connection with other worlds. And I think sometimes we forget that was one of the original intentions behind what we call music, was to take us to another world, like in the rituals and ceremonies and you know, concerts and whatever. So fortunately, I really don't listen to much music. I will listen to classical music sometime, but I'm spoiled. It's like going and having really great food. It's like, you know, that's okay, but it's not really great, not fantastic. But that's my personal taste. So, but you can learn a lot from listening to like even movie soundtracks, how they tell stories.
Yeah.
So I think
And operas.
opera, yes. So I think the narrative quality of music is really important. And just speaking of music, you know, the gongs, we play the gongs, you know, this beautiful sound. So what we're playing, there's that one sound, that tone, that contains a huge wealth of possibilities. It's a very subtle thing. You can listen to that sound and start to hear all the layers of it. It's very zen in some ways. It's very pure, very clean. And it can take you, and it also, I think it really asks you to engage the process of listening more than sometimes, you know, songs and music do. Because it's like you can just take a free ride, listen to a great song, and then, you know, that's fine. But when you're playing in this type of way, you're actually having to participate with it in a different way. If you're not willing to be in a meditative, receptive frame of mind when you have sound healing or listen to gongs, it will show. Whereas sometimes we use music to distract us. This is not to distract you, it's to actually focus you and to make you be with yourself. So it's challenging for some people to be that way.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
I see
yeah.
what you're saying, because it's like you were saying, you can drive somewhere, have a song on in the background,
Yeah.
not even be cognizant of. Whereas this, as soon as you strike that, it's almost like, whoa, what just happened? It just took you right back to here and now.
Yeah, so my thing is don't gong and drive. I mean,
Yeah.
you couldn't like driving and being here. No,
Yeah.
I mean, really, I've had some people try that. They had a recording of the gong, and they were actually going on a trip, and they were playing, the gong was playing in their car, and they're driving. And all of a sudden, they realized they were driving 30 miles an hour on a 70 mile an hour freeway. They got so zoned out, they're just like, I'm not even moving. I'm just like, I'm in another space.
Wow.
Because it does take you out of that. You really can't. So yeah, I think that's why it does demand on the listener a participation of some sort to really to appreciate what that sound's about. Yeah.
Funny you brought that up, because I'll never forget one of the first sound baths I ever did with a friend. We did it together, and later she got a text from one of the people that came to our sound bath, and he said he drove 3 exits past his exit before he realized where he was. He was like, he kind of like came out of the state, was like, whoa, where am I? And his exit was like
Way back
miles
there.
behind. So funny, but also like we need to be aware of these things.
Yeah, because
right?
it puts you in a different space. It really, in some ways, think of it this way: the gong, especially for me, but other sound healing instruments, can take you out of time. And I think this, and people, when you hear it, they say, "How long was that? Was that like, you know?" And you say, "Well, that was only 10 minutes." They say, 10 minutes? I feel like it was hours. Or sometimes it's like, you know, it's that experience, or it's like, that was 30 minutes. It felt like 5 minutes,
Yeah.
because the gong and other instruments like that have a quality to really make you have a new relationship with time, because unlike a song that has a progression, you have a lyrics, you have a refrain, you have movements of a symphony, you're very much stuck in time with these progression sounds like that. There is no sense of linear progression. You strike it here, you strike it there, different sounds are coming out, there's no linear thing going on here. So we kind of get to step out of the time zone with these instruments, which is quite liberating, because really we are outside the time zone. It's only through our own self-limitations we perceive ourselves as being like, day-to-day type of people. But really, I don't know if you saw that movie, Everything, Everywhere, All at Once. That's a great example of how, it's a great example of how it really, there's so many time currents here. And what things like the gong can teach us is like you can step into another time stream if you like. And the present can last forever. So that's true when you're with the gong and playing like that. If you play the gong, time disappears for you. So you have to be aware. If you're playing for 15 minutes, make sure you have a clock somewhere, because you'll just think, I don't know what time this is.
It's true, and you kind of like get in a zone, almost like a trance, like you're.
It's trance, yeah. But as a player, you have to kind of like stay. You can be in the trance or feel the trance, but you have to realize that you're also creating the trance. So you have to, you have a responsibility here.
Be somewhat grounded.
Be somewhat grounded, and so that's a beautiful thing I think about playing sound healing, is that you get to really go deep. At the same time, you get to stay connected in a way that sometimes people don't stay connected when they're just relaxing.
Yeah.
So I tell people, if you're playing sound healing and gongs, you're getting all the goodies. You're getting more goodies than the people receiving the sound. So it's quite an honor and a privilege to be able to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think what's special for me too, I mean, not my first gong, but I think the first gong that I really fell in love with, it was the symphonic.
Yes,
and I think we were discussing earlier, like, just even with all the overtones within that gong, it's just so meditative and so profound.
Absolutely.
Do you have a favorite gong? That's like, do you have a favorite kid? Do you have a favorite gong?
Do you have a favorite child? You have a favorite? Not really. I find it changes quite a bit. I mean, there's some gongs like everybody. It's like, it's anything has a frequency, be it a gong or a person or whatever it may be. There's some we respond to really well. It's like we're in tune with it. Yeah. So there are some gongs when I play, I feel like, I'm really in tune with this. It feels like we have a relationship that's really easy. And some of the gongs, like, not so much. It's pretty. It's nice. I wouldn't want to take it home with me. I might. So a lot of times there's that recognition, I think, that an instrument can create in yourself of something that's there. So I don't really have a favorite. I do tend to find gongs I start to want to know more about. It's like a conversation with people or a good person. It's like you meet someone and you think, that's an interesting person. And you keep talking to them, that's really deep. And you keep working with it and you realize there's something there that's more. So a lot of times with a gong, especially one you just get, I tell people that it's like having a new friend. You have to kind of really get to understand what it's trying to tell you. So you have to listen. And the conversation with the gong is mostly you listening, because the gong will tell you what it would like you to do, how to play, and there's that. It is like a conversation, although your conversation is really coming from this, and you're being guided to really engage in that relationship that way. So yeah. So do I have a favorite gong? No, I have favorite types of gongs. Gongs that are made in a certain way where I think the metal is really good. They have a lot of depth and subtlety to the sound. It's like anything that's made, there's a craft to it, making certain things. Just like a good chef, you can take the same ingredients, have a great chef, and just, oh my gosh. So it does depend a little bit on those who create the gong, the maker of the gong, how they make it, how it's created, what it's composed of, so there is that piece of it that is important, and to have a favorite gong, for sure.
So let me ask you, would you say with gongs, variety is the spice of life, or not necessarily?
Well, one gong has all the variety you need. Now, having said that, at one time I owned 50 gongs. Wow. Because I could see something in each of those gongs that was unique. It's like having 50 really good friends, and they're all different. So why do you want to get rid of one of them? Eventually, I realized you can't really handle 50 relationships in your life. Most people can't. So I've got to the point now where I like to maybe have 6, 7, maybe 8 gongs. I get to play more and get more connected to. And after a while, I might let one of them go out into the world and another one comes in. So I kind of like, I'm more into the place of like rotation, where gongs come and gongs go. Because, there's a point, just like friends, you go through life and you need a different kind of friend or you move away. And so I think being open to your instruments is really good. Not being overly possessive is also good. I know some people have these beautiful gongs and singing bowls and they don't want anyone else to touch them. And I understand that because they're amazing. But honestly, I tell people that we only take care of these for a certain amount of time because, especially gongs, they last forever. Crystal bowls, you have to be careful. They may break. They may break on you after you buy them. But most of these gongs, they will last for 500 years. And so you may think it's your gong, but no, you're just visiting for a while. And there's always another one to encounter. So I'm now in my mindset is find gongs you love, play them, and you don't play one so much anymore, just let it go to someone else, trade, sell, whatever. And another one will show up, and it's not. And people say, "I want to find a gong." Well, don't find a gong. Just let the gong find you. It's like being in the place where the gong is, or something happens. You have a conversation, and the gong shows up. It's like adopting a cat. The cat shows up at your door. You go, okay, they find you. It's like, oh well, come on in. You're my cat now. So it's a little bit like that with the gong.
And your cats love the gongs, right?
Cats do love the gongs. They're a little. The first encounter usually is a little bit of a fear because it's unusual. But once they get into the sound, they also relax, and they'll start to be attracted to being near the gong. So I find animals in general, if you play it properly. Now you can if you play it improperly, no one's going. A cat, a human, no one's going to want to be near the gong. But a gong well played brings a harmony to all living creatures. It really does. It's very soothing, very relaxing. Because you hear about, you heard in the old days that, someone would play the music and the animals, the tigers would lie down, And that is partially true, that in the purest essence of sound, it's universally recognized that there's something that's beyond this time and space we all occupy. A tiger, a cat, or a person, whatever. The sound can remind us that we are actually all these things and all these entities. So that's the beautiful thing, I think, about sacred sound. Yeah, how we look at it like that, yeah.
Well, I love what John said last night in the group, and he said, "You're a gong master," and you said, "Wait, no, I'm a gong slave."
Well, I think
liked that.
I'm going to say a gong servant.
Servant.
I like that better than slave because sometimes I'm a slave because I got to buy more of these gongs, I got to buy more mallets. But the idea of mastery, that's a very what's the right word? Not masculine, I guess, but it's a very Western way of seeing something. Like, I'm going to get something, I'm going to master it. It's going to be mine. Gongs are really beyond your mastery, I think. I think you can master yourself, you can master your playing, but the idea that somehow you're going to know all there is to know about this instrument is a fallacy. The more you play a gong, the more you realize you don't know anything about it. Because there's a mystery here that just gradually unfolds within yourself and other people who hear it that's inexplicable and unknown. So I think keeping this open mind that there is no such thing as a mastery of the gong. There is a sense of a deep, what's the right word? Partnership, maybe. If you have a partnership, that's good enough. That's even quite a big thing to have. But we really, in some ways, if you think about this relationship, there's tell people there's the gong, there's you, there's a mallet between you and the gong, and that relationship is like really coming from the heart down the arm into the mallet, and your energy as you breathe in, as you breathe out, and you strike that sound. That sound you're hearing is just how the sound was in me at the time I struck it, my energy. If I had been in a different place, I might have struck differently, the sound may be different. So it is that very intimate relationship of a person's energy being transformed into sound, to amazing thing of the gong. And let's not forget our friend the mallet, right? Tell people, right, they're so focused on the gong, it's like, but wait a minute, without this, you don't have anything but a piece of metal, This is what you need. So finding the mallet for your gong and for you is also a journey too. Yeah.
Well, it's funny you brought that up because I had a friend text me that she doesn't like her gong. And I said, why don't you buy a couple of mallets and then decide if you like your gong or not?
It's so true. Because it's like the intermediary. It's like, I don't know how to describe it. But without the proper mallet, the gong can't make the sound it wants to make. And you can't produce it either. So that's one of my big missions is like, gong mallets. They're so underappreciated because
Yeah.
we tend to buy the pretty thing, and then the mallets come because we need a mallet.
Right.
So like that, yeah,
Right.
like that, yeah. So, one of my passions, I write these books about the gong because when I first started playing, I really didn't have a teacher. I heard about it and I saw people do it, but I didn't know anything. But it took me a while, but I was really encouraged as I started playing it. I was getting better, but no one was teaching me how to be better. I was just doing it. Now, it took a long time, like years. But I kept finding, if I keep playing this long enough, I start to discover things about it that I didn't know before, and I do sound better. And there was a point where like every 6 months, I felt like I was a new gong player, stepping up. And I still kind of feel like that every few weeks when I play it again, I'm at a different level because I've changed as I do that. So I want to encourage people, yes, you do need to learn some basic things, how to play any instrument, of course. But what really makes you that player is your own personal practice that works on yourself, your mind, your neutrality, and also just being willing to be with the gong and listen to it. It's trying to tell you things all the time. But sometimes we want to have our own agenda of what we want to do to it. Yeah. And it's like having a conversation. You come into a conversation, you say, I want to tell this person that, I want to convince them to do that, and this is what it might be. It's like, yeah, well, you're not going to learn anything from that conversation. So it's really, I think, deeply listening is one of the keys, and also being comfortable with intuitive spontaneity in your playing. But if you're going to be spontaneous and intuitive, you also better have some good technique. Otherwise, you may just randomly do stuff. So you have to, it's kind of both in a way. So that's where my training part comes in.
Right.
Because like some of you maybe have gone to a sound healing session, you thought, that didn't really feel too good, didn't sound too good, and I don't think that person knows what they're doing. And they probably don't, because I didn't when I first started playing. So there's that process. So I do think, I encourage all of us who are sound people, make sure, keep refining and work with your techniques, work with your instruments, work with the equipment, but mostly work on yourself.
With that being said, like, do you feel like, because I know what we're doing is growing so much in popularity, and would you say, because I know, some people, if they're yoga teachers or Reiki practitioners or what have you, they might go online and buy some instruments, but would you advise for people that are starting out to maybe get into some kind of training before they kind of jump and make that leap?
A little, yes, of course. I mean, it's like learning to drive a car. It's like
Right.
I've never driven a car before. I'm gonna buy a really fancy car and I'm gonna drive it off the lot and maybe wreck it. And I see that with some people. Excuse me, they buy these really beautiful big gongs and they may cost $3,000 or $4,000 or $5,000. They don't know how to play them.
Right.
It's kind of like, well, first of all, it's kind of well, I shouldn't judge, but it is like these gongs. They're not that many of them. So if you're going to take the responsibility of owning something that is fairly precious in some ways, even the singing bowls too, you owe it to the instrument itself and to the people who hear it to at least understand just the basic techniques of how to hold a mallet, how to strike a gong. I mean, this is basic stuff. You can learn it in a few days. I usually teach it in 2 or 3 days. You can learn that, and and once you've learned that, and then you can experiment on other people a little bit,
Right.
if you have the right attitude about it. But I think there's that impulse that we want it done now. We want to be whatever it is we want to be right now. It seems like an easy profession. I want to be a sound healer. It takes me like 3 days, order the stuff, I have it set up, I go do it to something like that. And it might work out really well. It may. But you may also find that, you don't grow in that. You don't grow. And I think that's part of the process of being willing and patient to take the time to grow into this, to grow into it. And for me, it really several years, maybe many years. And I don't really feel like I was really playing the gong well till after 20 years of playing the gong. So you have to be very humble about this and not compare yourself to something else. And just be I think that's the right word, to be humble, to realize you probably don't know what you're doing now, and that's okay. You'll be taken care of if you don't have an ego involvement. If you don't see it as a profession, we have to make money from it. That's the problem. Sometimes people don't like their job. They want to be a sound healer. They quit their job. They buy a few instruments. It doesn't work out for them because they're not ready for it.
I think it's important too, like, to always kind of remain a student to a certain degree. Like, find yourself some good teachers, some good mentors. Like, my feeling is like you're either growing or eroding, right? So it's constantly on the path to
Right.
learn more.
That's right. And I think one way to do that is not to see the sound healing thing as a profession. It's a calling. It's something that you have to do, that's something within you that you want to share. And that's so true. And I think that's one. So yeah, in some ways, listen, we have to have good financial hygiene. We have to be able to pay for our gongs and our singing bowls and all that. But don't take it. It's like teaching yoga. When I first started teaching yoga, I wasn't thinking I'm going to just quit my day job and teach yoga. I mean, that
Right.
took decades.
Right.
But I just felt like I had to teach it. I wanted to share it. I need to do that. And I think that should be the attitude of people in sound healing. It's like, I don't need to do this to pay my bills, but I want to do it because I feel like I must share this. And if you come with a pure heart like this, you'll be surprised at how good you get, how much people appreciate you, what you're doing. So, and listen, it's okay to also be financially successful because then you can buy more gongs. And, and honestly, I train people because I also need some financial
Sure.
foundation.
Right.
But I think initially that wasn't my motivation. And I'm not saying, so I think just being aware of, ask yourself, why do I want to do this? Because I don't like my job? That's, it could be one, that's a very common thing. But also, if you're thinking, I've seen what it does for me, how it's changed me, and I want to have other people have that experience. Then you come to a place of purity and completeness, and you'll probably do quite well. If you stay very humble and keep your ego out of it, you'll learn a lot, and you'll be a fantastic sound healer over time.
Well, I think we should mention that where we are right now, because I don't think I did mention that. So we're
Where are we?
Where are we?
We're in a room with a gong right now.
we're on another planet, first of all.
Planet
We're
Gong.
in Miami, which is kind of like another planet.
It is, I agree.
Yeah.
It's another planet in Miami.
So, and I'm from New York, and I'm saying this, which is so strange. But so thank you to Chloe and Chris of Fresh Prana Yoga Studio in Miami, Florida,
Yeah.
for hosting us and this event, and the space is beautiful. So if you're in the Miami area, please
Yeah.
come check them out. And so we're in a 3-day sound immersion training with the gongs.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so you do this all over the world,
Well,
right?
more world of the world years ago because
Yeah.
right now it's more U.S. and Central South America. But yeah, for many years we went to Europe, Asia, Australia, basically 20 countries, and taught people because that's what I loved about the gong. The gong is universal. It's a universal language, and no matter what country you're in and the students you're working with, we all speak gong, and we all love the gong. And so it was like an instant community of people who came together in this frequency of the gong. And so yeah, my passion is training and teaching and traveling in that respect. But I also want to mention too that I think we have to have spaces for this to happen. Like the studio, for example, it takes a lot of work to have any type of yoga studio. It takes a lot of dedication.
And you
to
have
do
one,
that.
right?
I had five, right? I had five of them. And it was a good place to kind of get in that community. And I do want to emphasize that is the community of sound healing, the community of gong players. And that's where I came from. I came from a yoga community. It's only through community that we're going to build this and make it work. So I think it's important that we find some way to keep connecting and building a community and sharing this with people. Because we're at a stage, I think, with sound healing, where I saw yoga was back in, well, I don't know, maybe in the early 80s even, maybe the 70s or something, where it was still a little unusual, but not so much now, but it's still a little bit. But people are getting passionate about it, and they want to do this, and they're trying to find how to be in a community around it. So I think we have an obligation, for those of us who are already here, to see how we're going to hold this community intentionality around sound healing. So it's not like, each person on their own agenda, but we also have the common purpose that we want to be able to let people experience this powerful technology that's going to be much more present in all of our lives. So that's probably our challenge right now, not just say buying a gong, playing a gong, but how do you build community through that? That's what's really going to be so healing for everybody, to have that experience. Yeah.
What do you think of people who say I'm a sound healer?
Well, I think you're taking on some karma there. So if you want to say that, that's great. I think it's we have to describe what we do somehow, right? I mean, my own personal belief is no one's a healer. Healing always comes from within the person who's receiving. So you're really more of a reminder, facilitator, whatever word you want to use for it. But I think it's important that we have to have this shift in what a healer is, no matter what kind of healer you may be. That if someone's looking to us to take care of them, I don't think you want to participate in that relationship because you can't take care of people enough or all the time. We see this in modern day medicine and healing where you abdicate, you give up your own responsibility for your process. So to think that if all you have to do is come and lay down in the room and someone's going to play a gong for you, you'll be healed, you'll be better for having done that probably. But the healing only occurs after the gong session, the work you do on yourself that you're inspired to do because of the gong session. So it's really more, I think we're kind of placed now like, what do you call yourself? I can't call myself a gonger. Am I a gonger or a gongster or whatever I am? But I realized maybe we don't need that because we're always trying to categorize and limit something by, a phrase or a title. But, in reality, we have to do something like that. But I think we have to be very mindful of the ego that's involved in this kind of work when you're presenting it as a relationship of a healer and those who are being healed. It's a very tricky path, I think, personally, to go down. So I don't really see myself as a healer. I really don't. I see myself more as a teacher, and that's the role I stay in most of the time. I'm just teaching you something, and whatever happens because of that, healing or whatever, that's all good. Yeah.
Can you explain the correlation, for those that don't know, between Kundalini Yoga and the Gong?
Well, yes, I can. Well, because I was there, and I actually saw one of the first gongs ever used in Kundalini Yoga classes back in the late 69, 70, 71. What happened was, the gong is an Asian instrument. Where it came from, people are still deciding. China, Indonesia, even India. No one really knows exactly, but it is obvious that in certain parts of India, the gong was very present and used. In other parts of Asia too, and it was used mostly in the temples. It was used by the priest or the whatever words we want to describe them. It was used as part of their spiritual work. And the teacher that I studied with back in the 70s, Yogi Bhajan, his teacher in India was also a gong player. And he had the Indian gongs. And he played the gong. This is probably back in the 1940s, I guess. Yeah, 40s probably, or late 30s. He was a gong player, or he played the gong. And so he trained the teacher that brought Kundalini Yoga to the United States, the gong. The gong is part of the practice of yoga. It was part of the whole practice. It was played for not just relaxation, it was just played for the whole process of transformation. And so when Kundalini Yoga started to emerge in the late 60s and early 70s, there was a natural tendency to bring that gong, and this is, by the way, a Western gong, is very different from the Indian gongs, over into this culture of yoga. And so for many years, the only way most people heard the gong outside of a band or orchestra was in a Kundalini Yoga class. The purpose of that was, this was at the time it began to be popular, is that it was a time of that, it was actually post-psychedelic revolution where people were now doing other kind of drugs, like the hard drugs. And there was a lot of really problem with drug addiction and a lot of destruction from drugs and death and suicides. So the idea was to bring the gong into that community of people who were from the 60s and 70s who were wanting to change consciousness and give them a way to experience another reality through sound and also to heal their nervous systems. Because when you use drugs, it just wipes out the nervous system completely. And it can create a lot of psychological problems. So the gong was actually part of the yoga process of healing, to help people heal. And from there, as people did the yoga, and on my part, I started a yoga center. It had Kundalini Yoga, but also had other types of yoga. And so we would have different types of yoga in our center. And in the Kundalini Yoga class, we'd be playing the gong. Other yoga students would come and say, "What's that?" Ashtanga flow students say, "What's that sound? I want to go hear that sound." So they got exposed to the gong by that process. And then they want to take it else into their classes. And then from there, the sound healers being people who are using the tuning forks and the bowls, they started saying, "What's up with that?" And they started saying, "Let's try this too." So it kind of moved that way out. And now it's not even just localized anymore. But that's where it was kind of like part of the whole process of the practice. It was the gong, to have that gong and that practice of Kundalini Yoga.
Yeah.
And I find that the practice of that yoga is very sound-based. It uses a lot of mantra. It's very much about tapping the sound current. So it's just an easy step from using a yoga that's very sound-based, sonic yoga, so to speak, to using sounds like the gong with that yoga. And outside of that yoga, too, as well. Yeah.
And I loved a little bit of a different subject, but somehow it reminded me of it. I loved how yesterday when you were explaining with the prana and inhaling and then exhale and strike the gong.
Yeah.
I loved that.
Yeah, that release, that transmission of your energy of the breath into the sound. And that was one of the ways they used to teach in Indonesia, the professional gong players, the gamelan orchestras, how to use their instruments. But you always connect with your breath. In this case, you're connecting with your energy, your prana, because it is a pranic energy transfer. And the sound is just the medium through which it carries. You can do it through food. You can cook amazing food. You can grow amazing food. You can transfer prana that way. You can also transfer it through sound.
Yeah.
How you do that. Yeah, yeah.
Well, we have your book here.
We do have one
Yoga,
book. Well,
and
yeah,
this is one of how many books?
Oh,
that you have?
I've only written about 3 or 4, but
Okay.
on the gong, that
Only
is.
3
Well, the gong. No, I'm teasing because there's so much to write. I have a book called Gong Therapy, Teaching Gong Yoga, but I also teach Gong Yoga Nidra, I teach Gong Meditation. I mean, I could write more books, but we're at a time right now in our lives, people don't read as many books as they used to. They just want to have that experience. So my passion now is really more developing trainings and workshops. People go and learn this and then go, and if you want to read the book later, that's great. Actually, writing the books teach me. That's what that was. So yeah. So yeah, I'd love to do it. I'd love to be with people. We're in this weekend right now of I think about 18, 20 people. We're just doing gongs 6-7 hours a day for 3 days.
It's incredible.
And we're right.
A real immersion.
Yeah, and right now, in just a few minutes, you are going to go to a room with other people and play and practice what you've learned this weekend. Because it's very hands-on. It's not theoretical. It's actually it's doing.
Right.
Rather than seeing and doing, it's hearing and doing. So monkey hear, monkey do.
So 2 more questions before we wrap it up, and we will, because people are coming in. Where can people find you if they want to?
Where can they find you?
We'll put your social media links and your website.
Thank you. Well, just yogimehtab.com, and I have my events listed there, and that is my passion now. It's just going to certain communities, teaching what we can teach, and that type of thing. So that's mostly where you'll see me now.
Good. And I'll put all your links below. They could buy your books. They could follow you on Instagram.
Yeah, they can get autographed pictures. No, I'm just. They get T-shirts with Mehtab written across it.
I love that.
No, they can't do that. But it is the world we live in now. It is amazing because things can happen so quickly now with media the way it is. So I would encourage people, if you're going to be sound healing, just be aware of the medium we all have to work within. Like right now, this podcast.
Yeah.
I can imagine this happening 10 years ago.
Right.
Not even 5 years ago. Sound. So we're all really rapidly accelerating this whole process. So get in touch and we'll see what we can do. And I love to help people learn to be better sound players, gong players.
Yeah. So lastly, what is sound healing to you?
What is sound healing to me?
It's a loaded question.
Yeah, no. It's like, but what is sound healing to me? How would I describe that? I think it's recognizing that within each of us, we are already healed. We are already whole. It's something we've forgotten. And the sound reminds us that we are already whole, we're already forgiven, we're already perfect. And the sound in its perfection reminds us that the fact that we can appreciate that sound means that we're already there. So it's not about a long journey, it's just about recognition and acceptance of who you are as spirit. And when you're with a gong or sound like that, all you're with spirit. And that forces you, I guess that's the right word, or reminds you that's who you are too, and that's why you relate to that sound. You are the gong. You are that spirit of the gong, and that's how I relate to sound healing.
Wow, that was profound. That was really beautiful. I started to get emotional.
Okay. Well, before you start crying.
That's a good way to end it.
And Carrie, thanks to you so much for doing this. I think it's so wonderful that your passion is actually letting people know more about this. It's such a wonderful way.
Yeah, I think it's important, and I also think the time is right.
It is. We're all here for the same reason.
Yeah.
So let's agree to do it right, and let's get on with it.
Yeah.
All right.
So Yogi Mehtab, and I'm Carrie from Santosha Sound Studios. So I hope you give this video a thumbs up, and you follow Yogi Mehtab, and gong you.
And gong on.
Gong on. Yay!
Hey, thank you so much for watching. Please be sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell.
I loved my chat with Yogi Mehtab Benton, and I have included his links down below. See you next time.